I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. So something happened at one of our schools in November, and it really hit close to home for me and my colleagues because at one of my own schools, in fact, where I taught for many years, we had this incredible thing happen, and it was really scary. And I think we have a video that's going to talk a little bit about it, and then I'll give a little bit more information.
Happy to be here. Happy to be back. Uh, Grateful.
Senior Lorenzo Blackshear was playing basketball last Friday on his school campus when suddenly he collapsed on the court, suffering a sudden cardiac arrest.
I got there, checked for a pulse, no pulse, and just started CPR.
Teacher and firefighter Mr. Vega administered CPR. Lorenzo regained a pulse before paramedics showed up.
As they were taking Lorenzo in the truck, and so she was asking, does he have a pulse? Does he have a pulse? I just kept telling her, Mom, they're working on him. They're working on him, I promise. Because there were times when there was no pulse, and it was in and out. So that was gut-wrenching.
When I got to the hospital and I saw him on the bed and he was just lifeless, laying there, that was very hard for me.
His parents saying it's been the hardest week of their lives as Lorenzo recovers in the hospital.
It's been hell, right? Because I dropped him off to school in the morning, happy, his Lorenzo self. And then to get the call from the school saying that there's something wrong with him, I froze.
I feel like we won the lottery. The stars aligned for us. Everything happened perfectly. There was someone on site. They was prepared. The ambulance got here quick.
In fact, just months prior, the school offered CPR training thanks to Project Adams and the Nicholas Children's Hospital, a program committed to implementing life-saving training at schools.
I think it's the most important thing because the survival rates are way higher when CPR is initiated right away.
That program services and trains at over 200 Miami-Dade schools and now is looking to expand into Broward County. Lorenzo's story at Somerset Academy shows just how important this life-saving training is.
As a principal and someone who's in charge of these children during the day, you feel very responsible to make sure that we do the best we can for these kids. And I'm just delighted that Lorenzo's here today.
Lorenzo still is on that road to a full recovery, but he is expected to walk that stage at graduation in 2024. In Pembroke Pines, Andrea Martinez, Local 10 News.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, this is a very serious situation that came up. And very recently, the Somerset Academy campus that was mentioned in the story, which is in Pembroke Pines, went through a training with Project Adam. And that particular partnership was with Nicholas Children's Hospital, which is a children's hospital in South Florida. But Project Adam is not only in South Florida. It is named after and in memory of a child who unfortunately did lose their life in a situation like this. And the family created this memorial project, and there's partnerships with hospitals throughout the country. So there's a link that I'm actually sharing in the description box that helps us connect with hospitals around the country where educators and anyone really, but I obviously am encouraging educators can get plugged in, can get resources available. While I was going through some training material, I thought it was really interesting. I was trying to get an idea of how available this information is for schools, for teachers, and for students. And I realized, again, based on resources that are provided on the Project Adam website, that there are 38 states in the United States that actually have mandated CPR training, not just for educators, but for students. It is actually a legal requirement for graduation to have high school students take CPR classes as well. Florida is not one of those states. So, going to be knocking on some doors for that. This is something really important that we need to have. And it's always interesting when these stories develop that people ask questions about why, why was this child in this situation? And what happens in a large portion of these situations is that there was not really a medical indicator that this child would have a problem prior to the event, which is terrifying, because these things literally can happen at any time with anyone, and we would not be able to predict it. So the only way we can be prepared is to have that training at our fingertips, quite literally in our hands, to be able to save these children.
So, I mean, not something that I'm going to say very often on this program for anybody who knows me, but I'm just about speechless from that story. I mean, incredible. Obviously, we know all the people in that news report,
Yeah.
Sarah. And seeing, the viewing audience, have the pleasure of getting to see Dr. Bernie Montero's eyes, the principal at Somerset, who's obviously a colleague of yours and mine, and seeing, in his face just the concern he has for that student, and what this a whole ordeal has meant to him and meant to the entire Somerset family. As that parent noted, they hit the lottery, and thankfully this all worked out. But to your point, it speaks to how something like this can happen to anybody on school campus at any time in any situation. And so it is critical for every school stakeholder, teachers, students, parents, faculty, staff, what have you, to get this training, and because it can make a life or death difference. And thankfully, it worked out in this scenario. And, we obviously know of situations where it doesn't work out because response can't happen in time. And so to see an outcome like this is very heartening, and it speaks to needing more measures like this in the future.
Absolutely. I know that locally we've had legislation surrounding AED and things like that. We have a lot of crisis response, a lot of safety and hardening happening in our schools. But I think that this is something that is so critical, because, as we've both mentioned at this point, it is so unpredictable and it is so necessary. And we know that response rates in an emergency are variable. We have no control over some of those things. So what we do have control over is being available, being prepared to see what we can do in an emergency situation. So I'm really excited to share the links in the description box, like I said. And I would really encourage anyone in the listening audience, and I'm challenging myself. I know that I've gone through CPR certification, and I went to look at when my certification expired. It's time, right? I had to take a reflective look, because so many of us as educators, we've gone through training, we've gone through experiences. Things change, recommendations change. So it's not going to hurt to go through something like that again. And also to make sure that we are properly educating anyone that comes into to contact with students, to make sure that they are prepared to be a lifesaver if needed, if called upon.